Rewind with Rosa. I'd like to introduce John Monteath. He is a winemaker and owner of beautiful Killiecrankie Wines here in gorgeous Harcourt, Ravenswood in central Victoria. And he's kindly joined us today to talk a little bit about some of his lovely wines, which I'm sharing as we speak, and to talk a little bit about the history and how he came to be here at Killiecrankie.
Well, I'm a refugee from Melbourne about 20 years ago, but after that I had a desire to grow grapes, make wine. So chasing the dream, so to speak. And yeah, moved up here, found this wonderful little property. We have a vineyard in Harcourt. We buy some grapes in, put myself through schooling, did all the right things, done all the hard yards, and hard work pays off. We're sort of starting to be an overnight sensation after 20 years.
Oh, really? So what does that mean? You've got people coming quite a bit now?
Yeah, the cellar door's been quite busy when we can be open, and at the moment we still can be. But yeah, it's been steadily improving. We've had major roadwork issues along the way for 18 months with the major works off our road, but apart from that, we've been steadily increasing and getting more traction through the restaurants, things like that.
Oh, yeah. What, selling your stuff to restaurants?
Yeah, which has sort of been our aim to try to be in the the better places around the central Victorian area.
Because Malcolm, my husband, was saying that there's a new place that's opened up in Bendigo. What is it called?
Allium.
Yeah, and it's stocking your wines.
Yeah. We've got 3 or 4 wines in there, so yeah, big 4.
Fantastic. So talk to us a little bit about our lovely wines.
Well, the wines for today are, we've got the Lola Montez Tempranillo. So
I'm drinking, I think, aren't I?
I think you are. Yes. So Lola Montez is a wonderful story of a woman, Irish woman, who came out to the goldfields in 1856, and she played in Castlemaine, Ballarat, Bendigo. She was a woman of a bit of notoriety. She was actually an Irish woman, but she went by her stage name of Lola Montez. So the story was too good to not put on a wine label, and has such nice ties to the goldfields area. So and the Tempranillo, being a Spanish variety, has that wonderful Spanish sound to it as well. So yeah.
So she came here, and I think last time we were talking about it, you said she was married.
Well, the story is that she married an English army officer, and that ended in disgrace. She,
what does that mean? What happened?
Well, a woman divorcing or separating from her husband back in the 1800s was
disgrace.
Yes. She was a courtesan to the King of Bavaria at the time. So her portrait is still in one of the old palace buildings. The king had 14 women painted, all by the same artist, and Lola was one of them. She ended up in America playing her show in the goldfields in California. And in 1856, she caught this little ship out from America to Australia to play Sydney, Melbourne, but her show was probably better received by the miners in the goldfields. Right. So, yeah.
And when she sort of ended up,
back in America. No, she went back to America with her then manager, who was potentially her partner at the time. He disappeared off the ship before Hawaii, never to be seen again. So it's all these stories. When you look up the stories of Lola, there's...
She pushed him over or something?
Oh, actually, well, that's what I thought initially, but apparently she was quite devastated by the event. So, but yeah, apparently lightning struck a theatre in Bendigo while she was playing, and she had a horsewhipping fight with the editor of the Ballarat newspaper. She's a very independent woman.
She's a woman after my own heart.
I was going to say, you've got to give her and it was a great character to name the wine after, yeah.
And you've got her sister.
So we've got a sister wine now, which is only available at the cellar door. We only made not many cases, so we're selling it out of the cellar door, which is it's Monastrell and Shiraz. So Monastrell is a Spanish grape variety, but it's also grown in Italy and France, and in Italy they call it Mataro, which people are more familiar with, and in France it's called Mourvèdre. So any wines that have that GSM, they're Grenache, Shiraz, Mourvèdre, or Mataro, or Monastrell. So we've gone with the Spanish flavour again, of course, being with Lola, and it is selling really well out of the cellar door. So we're going to make more this coming vintage to really up the ante on that one. Yeah.
And is anyone else doing these sort of Spanish varieties around here?
There's a little bit. There's not a lot grown around here, but they call it the alternative wine varieties scene, I guess. So wine drinkers, they're at the stage where they want to try different things rather than just Shiraz and Cabernet and Chardonnay. Yeah. So they're really into experiment. You don't sell a lot of these wines, but it just gives you a nice sort of different connection with the consumer, and also they like to try different things, as I said before. So, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the name Killiecrankie.
Well, like most of our wines, they have a bit of a story, and so our winery does too. Killiecrankie, there was a battle at the pass of Killiecrankie in 1689, and for all you Outlander fans, no, it wasn't in it. But
my favourite show. I think I just lost so many hours of sleep with that. From midnight watching it.
So we often get asked that when people come to the cellar door, but I think Outlander, she dropped in at about 1720 something, but
okay.
she was involved, it was the time of the Jacobite uprising, which was fighting for the reinstatement of King James, and the Killiecrankie battle was part of that scenario as well. So King James of Scotland, I should say. So the clan that I'm descended from, the clan chieftain actually led that battle and actually had a significant victory. So it's a bit of a win for the clan, and it's always mentioned in clan history. So, and I love the word. The word was just we actually get people coming in. The only reason they come in quite often is we had to find out about the name. So, yeah.
And how did you get the Spanish connection then? Like
Scottish and Spanish? I just like to confuse people. My marketing is very mixed.
Eclectic marketing.
Eclectic, yeah. So we've got our Killiecrankie wines. We've just got our Crankie wines, which are a bit of fun. And I just thought, just something else with a Tempranillo. I thought just to try and...
Oh, I love the Lola Montez. I think it's a gorgeous idea to name a wine after a really infamous woman.
Well, infamous, independent, and I think she took no shies.
No prisoners.
No
prisoners.
She was a great character. So yeah.
All right, lovely. Okay, well we'll come back to now. You at the moment you have the cellar door open when?
Every weekend, 11 till 5, and we'd love to see you, but please try and book, because due to social distancing, we can't fit as many people in the cellar door as we used to. So we'd recommend booking first. Otherwise, you're welcome to try your luck, but you may have to wait outside for a little while. And in winter, we don't like to do that to people. So, yeah.
And where else in Bendigo, what other restaurants are stocking your wine at the moment?
Our Shiraz is in Masons, Allium, of course, Winebank are a great supporter of local wines, and they have our product. Restaurants, you've sort of got to keep working at, and because our wines have been in Woodhouse, but I don't think they're in there at the moment, and so it's just I've got to go back and say g'day and all that sort of stuff.
They'll buy some more, and
hopefully they'll put some more on. So, sort of working during the week, and then selling on weekends. I've sort of just got to selling the wine is the thing that I need to find more time for, and because it's very important to the whole thing. Yeah.
Well, this is all part of the Go Local theme that's going on in Bendigo at the moment, and this initiative was designed by my lovely husband to think we can really partner with some local businesses to promote them, promote us, because everyone's doing it tough. I mean, I suppose we're lucky we're not in Melbourne, but everyone's closed down, but everyone's doing it tough. So I know John will join us at the end of the session to talk about, if you mention this particular little webinar, that he'll give you a special deal if you come to visit him. But I think he's going to go off and...
I'm going to go off and do some wine work.
Do some wine work, and I'll talk about employment law cases. Let me get to the next. So, as I said, we're at Killiecrankie today, and it's really vital during this period that small businesses support each other. There's so much going on. It's actually astounding on a day-to-day basis, the number of cases, the number of things that are happening. So, one of my friends who runs a hotel told me that he's running at 10% of what he ran at last year. So I don't know how people sort of manage mentally, physically, emotionally when they're running at 10% of what they were this time last year. So as I said, we're at Ravenswood, 20 minutes drive south of Bendigo. It's a venture of John and his lovely partner Claire. And we're pleased that you could join us today to meet John and to learn a little bit more about his lovely wine. I, of course, am going to talk to you about employment law cases. So we've had a few interesting things going on in the last couple of weeks. I think one of the saddest things is that Justice Haig has been accused of sexual harassment, has had sexual harassment claims made against him. And I think that's sad because he's one of the most respected former justices of the High Court. And it makes you realise that the Me Too movement, the how pervasive sexual harassment and sexualised conduct is in the workplace. It's one of my personal sort of crusade issues, and some of you who know me know that I run women's seminars as well, and in the newsletter I have women's articles. I've got something today about that as well. But I suppose I feel sad about it because we hold justices, judges, particularly lawyers, I suppose more than others, hold high court justices up to like rarefied sort of levels. They're the epitome of our profession, the highest echelon of our profession. And so then when to realise that they have fallen foul of such really terrible behaviour, it's actually quite saddening. Anyway, we'll move on to look at some cases. So can you give stand down directives to employees just in case you have a downturn? We'll look at that case. And when can an employer avoid paying redundancy due to COVID? And paring back the JobKeeper hours reduction. I'll talk about that as let's keep going. If you've got questions, you can jump onto chat or onto Q&A, and one of my people here is watching that, and we can talk to those questions at the end. And we can, if you've got any questions, you can also just email me, or if you've got any things you'd particularly like me to talk about on a week-to-week basis, just email me, and I'm more than happy to talk about any employment law cases that you would like me to talk about. So walking the talk, I think after this whole situation broke with Justice Hayden, there was a lot of, well, especially in legal circles, there was certainly a lot of things written and published, and there's certainly now been some more things coming out of the High Court itself. So the Chief Justice of the High Court has said, really made a very strong view that any form of sexual harassment by a judicial officer is not only reprehensible, but it's certainly a breach of public trust. And I think that's how a lot of people have felt, that judges are held in such a high public opinion that there's been such a breach of public trust. This comment was made in response to the finding of the independent inquiry into allegations against former Justice Darcy Hayden, which found that he had, whilst a Justice of the High Court, sexually harassed 6 young female associates over a lengthy period of time. So part of what the Chief Justice has said is that they are committed to ensuring safe workplaces. As part of that, all federal courts and tribunals will review existing sexual harassment policies and procedures, induction programs, and they're going to engage external consultants to assist them with this whole process. It's a timely reminder to all employers that you must have adequate policies and procedures in place to both prevent and deal with sexual harassment. The consequences of not doing that are not only financial consequences, but it's a loss of your reputation, it's poor staff morale, it's loss of productivity, it's increased absenteeism. I talk, and sometimes I talk about this in my women's seminars that I run, that I was certainly the victim of sexual harassment a lot in my younger years. And as a young woman, you don't really, obviously it was back in the 80s and 90s, and things have changed a lot since then. But I suppose you have to wonder how much they've changed. But, you know, I had horrendous sexual harassment experiences. I had my manager, when I was 25, a horrible overweight man in his 50s, sweating man in his 50s, look at me when I was trying to talk to him about some work I was working on, telling me that I looked incredibly fuckable this particular day. So I suppose the reason I talk about it so openly is because there's a lot of shame attached to sexual harassment, and somehow you feel embarrassed this has happened to you, or somehow responsible this has happened to you. So I talk about it openly, and I think that happened with the Me Too movement, that once people started to talk about it openly, then everyone started to talk about it. And the more we talk about it, and the more we express what's happened to us in our lives, then the more we can put things in place to prevent it happening, or to try to prevent it happening. Of course, I provide lots of policies and guidance, and procedures and training in this space. So if you need any help, don't hesitate to give me a call. This is a case that was what I call the just in case case. It's where an employer sought to give an employee a temporary JobKeeper stand-down directive just in case his business had a downturn. So can you do that? Can you say, look, I'm not sure, things are really unstable and I'm not sure what's going to happen, so I'm going to stand you down just in case things deteriorate? Well, in Alan Jones Live Events Australia, which is in a Perth live events company, the answer was categorically no. So the West Australian broadcast media business stood down an employee and reduced his guaranteed hours by 40%. The reason they did this, they said, was the risk of cancellation. They run live events and they were scared that live events were going to be cancelled due to the pandemic. So they stood him down just in case. The employee challenged the employer's ability to do this, arguing that the directives could not be used as a contingency plan against a possible future event. They had to be used in relation to actual current events. The employer argued that it was necessary to do it as the pandemic situation was very fluid. Well, we've seen that in Victoria this week. It is very fluid. But it was held that, yes, the situation was fluid, but the directive was overly cautious, and that a cut of 20% was more than reasonable, but in the circumstances. The cut, the directive by 20% was more than reasonable. The employer couldn't just go around giving directives to stand down. He must consider other alternatives before cutting hours. For example, redeployment to other positions. The employee, whilst their business was quiet, could do training, or they could take annual leave. It's a very uncertain time, and employers really, I think, often genuinely just don't know what to do. And this is where it's really important to get advice early, because you don't want to find yourself in the Fair Work Commission having to answer really difficult, curly questions. So on to the next case that came up in the last little while. There's new provisions of the Fair Work Act that allow businesses to apply to the Fair Work Commission to avoid paying redundancies. I mean, I suppose there's always been a power to go there, but certainly during COVID, more businesses have been looking to try and, because of their financial situation, to seek an order from the Fair Work Commission that they don't have to pay a redundancy to staff. It's outlined under Section 120, and it's really the variation of redundancy pay when there is no capacity to pay, when the employer can't pay. And the employer makes an application to the Fair Work Commission to make a determination that they don't have to pay a redundancy. In this particular case, I apologise, I've got to click the hyperlink. Okay, I'm hyperlinking now, which I don't really want to do, so let me go back. Okay, so it was a Tasmanian company, and it was coal. Let me just go back, see if I have okay, no, that's fine. The Tasmanian company, Coal River Farm Investments, and they made such a claim. They went to the Fair Work Commission to say we don't have enough money to pay a redundancy, and it argued that it had had an 80% downturn and now had limited cash flow, and really it believed or put forward the argument that it was going to be insolvent in the next few months or so. Commissioner Tanya Cherifik wasn't really very convinced, and she said they didn't provide enough evidence. She said rather they relied on what she called incomplete, unverified profit and loss statement and an undated screenshot of an unnamed bank account. Not particularly clever if you're going to be looking to convince a commissioner of your financial status. She said, I accept the director's submission that Coal River is facing significant challenges and its future financial prospects are quite uncertain. She said she also acknowledges the very difficult challenges faced by the client or faced by the company in the current uncertain environment, and noted that it was a time of great stress and concern for businesses everywhere, and in particular this businesses. She said, however, it's not sufficient. The material they presented was insufficient to demonstrate that getting out of redundancy was not merely just a beneficial thing to the business. It was of assistance to the business rather than being really, really crucial to the survival of the business. I suppose the lesson for employers, if you're going to make such a claim in the Fair Work Commission, is to have solid, reliable and data that can be closely scrutinised by the Commissioner, because trust me, they will scrutinise every aspect of your data. In this instance, it was rejected. Another decision that was rejected this week was where a company tried to make an employee redundant, and it actually went to the federal court. As you would know, adverse action claims first get heard in the Fair Work Commission, and if they don't settle there, they go straight to usually the Federal Circuit Court, sometimes the Federal Court. In this case, and as you know, many of you will know, it's a reverse onus of proof. And what that means is the employer needs to show that it didn't dismiss the employee for unlawful reasons, that the dismissal or the termination was for a legitimate reason. In this case, it was redundancy. And unfortunately, it was found by the judge in that particular case that the employer had used a contrived selection process to make what he called a stellar senior employee redundant because of his role as an OH&S rep and his complaints to work safety regulator. He found, and pardon my typo, that the employer failed to disprove that it had sacked the employee because he was exercising his workplace rights as an OH&S rep. As you will know, as I've just said, it's not that the applicant in these cases has to prove that this has happened. More so, the respondent, the employer, has to disprove that this is what happened. It also found the company's director vicariously liable. As again you may know in this space, it's not just the companies that face penalties. Individuals can face penalties for general protection, often HR managers or certainly directors of the company. In this situation, a skills matrix was used, but Justice O'Hallahan found that it was really a document just that was contrived by the director to conceal the real reason for the dismissal. There's been a couple of cases like this where people have gone through a redundancy and they've contrived all the data around the redundancy to make it look like it's genuine, when really it's just to conceal and trying to get rid of a person for a particular reason. There was one in the federal court, the first one, I'll have to get the name of it, but it was an RMIT case. The judge also found the director an unsatisfactory witness who repeatedly dissembled and gave long, evasive and disingenuous answers even to the simplest questions. He was self-represented. Note to self, I wouldn't be going to the federal court self-represented. You certainly need someone to help you at the federal court. The director's claim that the applicant was selected for redundancy because he had the second lowest score on the matrix, the judge found demonstrably untrue. Quite strong language from a justice. He also found that the director's evidence that the company dismissed the employee because of poor performance was also untrue, because no complaints were ever made about his performance. On the contrary, he said, there was a lot of evidence that the employee was actually a stellar employee. His only failing was that he had fallen foul of OH&S and made complaints against the employer, i.e. had demonstrated a workplace right. In short, the company failed to prove that the reasons it gave for the dismissal were in fact what is called in this jurisdiction the substantive and operative reasons for the dismissal. It said they dismissed him because of the skills matrix, because he scored second lowest, and they failed to show that. Rather, it was shown, or the evidence of the employee was believed, that he was actually dismissed because he had exercised a workplace right, that of making OH&S complaints. Penalties are yet to be set, but as we all know, penalties in this jurisdiction are high, very high. So if you're going to go down this path, please be very careful. A little bit about me. I suppose most of you know me. I have worked in this space most of my life, most of my working life. I've been an HR person. I've been an employee relations person. I've been a principal advisor in employee relations. And in my late 30s, went back and studied law. So I've been an in-house lawyer. I have been worked for a national law firm. I've worked for an international bank, government departments. So I've really been on the receiving end of legal advice. I've been implementing legal advice. So I suppose from a client's point of view, that's a real bonus, because I know what it's like to get legal advice if you don't understand. And from me, you'll never get legal advice if you don't understand. In fact, one of my clients today, and I should have probably put this up on this slide, gave a lovely feedback that, and he's an accountant, so he's very precise and very careful. And he said that my advice was concise and considered, and he'd highly recommend me to all of his clients. So employment law is my passion. Employment is my passion, along with red wine. So, and those of you who know me well know that's also my passion. So I feel that I'm a very safe pair of hands. My recommendation always is spend a little bit of money up front and get the right advice early. Get advice early, get it often, and you'll save yourself having to squirm in front of a justice, either at the federal court or a commissioner at the Fair Work Commissioner, answering questions you don't want to answer. Now I think John's coming back to talk to us a little bit. You can find, thank you very much for your attention. You are unlucky enough not to be at this beautiful winery in front of this beautiful fire having a lovely red, but I hope you're enjoying a red anywhere. You can find me at that email and at that website, and you can find John at killiecrankie.com, or give him a call.
Give me a call. And I'd just like to add what Rosa was saying, that never trust anyone that doesn't drink red wine. That's just my philosophy of life. I suppose I'd like to say thanks for tuning in, and support local is very important these days. So if you are local, we'd love to see you. If you're not local, we'd probably like to offer you a special, well, for everyone. So with our Lola Montez wines, we'll send 6 bottles out at a 10% discount and no delivery charge. And if you know anything about delivery, you know it's quite expensive depending on where you are. So, yes, so we'd like to do that for people who can't attend our cellar door, and if you can attend our cellar door, we'll offer you the same discount and maybe a touch of smile nice at us. And mention, yeah, you've got to mention this little webinar.
I think it's called that.
I think it's webinar. This little wonderfully professionally made piece, which I'm contributing to now by Monday. Anyway, so yeah, we'd like to offer that, and yeah.
All friends, all my clients become my friends. My clients said they came here 3 weeks ago, John. I didn't mention that, and they loved it.
Okay.
So they joined today. So anyway, cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Thank you for joining. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.
You think automatically.